भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 16, Jaya and Vijaya, cursed by the sages. We are in the fourth section of this chapter, text 26 to 32. Lord reconciles the situation, and now the Lord says, O dear Brahmanas, know that the punishment that you inflicted upon both these personalities was originally ordained by me, and thus they will surely fall and will take birth in demoniac family. But they will never forget me, although they will have the perverted remembrance of me, and out of anger, their concentration on me will be intensified, and very quickly, Shigram, they will return back to me. So, purport.
Purport. The Lord stated that the punishment inflicted by the sages upon the doorkeepers Jaya and Vijaya was conceived by the Lord Himself. Without the Lord's sanction, nothing can happen. It is to be understood that there was a plan in the cursing of the Lord's devotees in Vaikuṇṭha, and His plan is explained by many stalwart authorities. The Lord sometimes desires to fight. The fighting spirit also exists in the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how could fighting be manifested at all? Because the Lord is the source of everything, anger and fighting are also inherent in His personality. When He desires to fight with someone, He has to find an enemy. But in the Vaikuṇṭha world, there is no enemy because everyone is engaged fully in His service. Therefore, He sometimes comes to the material world as an incarnation in order to manifest His fighting spirit. In Bhagavad Gita 4.8, also it is stated that the Lord appears just to give protection to the devotees and to annihilate the non devotees. The non devotees are found in the material world, not in the spiritual world. Therefore, when the Lord wants to fight, He has to come to this world. But who will fight with the Supreme Lord? No one is able to fight with Him. Therefore, because the Lord's pastimes in the material world are always performed with His associates, not with others, He has to find some devotee who will play the part of an enemy. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says to Arjuna, My dear Arjuna, both you and I have appeared many, many times in this material world, but you have forgotten, whereas I remember. Thus, Jaya and Vijaya were selected by the Lord to fight with him in this material world. And that was the reason the sages came to see him, and accidentally the doorkeepers were cursed. It was the Lord's desire to send them to the material world, not perpetually, but for some time. Therefore, just as on the theatrical stage, someone takes the part of an enemy to the proprietor of the stage, although the play is for a short time and there is no permanent enmity between the servant and the proprietor. So the Sura Janas devotees were cursed by the sages to go to the Asura Jana or atheistic families. That a devotee should come into an atheistic family is surprising, but it is simply a show. After finishing their mock fighting, both the devotee and the Lord are again associated in the spiritual planets. That is very explicitly explained here. The conclusion is that no one falls from the spiritual world or Vaikuṇṭha planet, for it is the eternal abode. But sometimes, as the Lord desires, devotees come into this material world as preachers or as atheists. In each case, we must understand that there is a plan of the Lord. Lord Buddha, for example, was an incarnation, yet he preached atheism. There is no God. But actually, there was a plan behind this, as explained in the Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Now further, Srila Prabhupada explains, then why the Lord sanctioned, here the Lord is stating that the punishment inflicted by the sages upon the doorkeepers is actually sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. So we have this idea, right? Without the Lord's sanction, nothing will happen. So how something happened at the doorsteps of Vaikuṇṭha, and that is sanctioned by the Supreme Lord Himself. Now there are many great acharyas who give very detailed commentary on why this particular instance happened. So Srila Prabhupada notes 5 reasons why this instance is happening. The first, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord sometimes personally wants to fight. Right. So, sometimes we say, how is life going on? And people say, no, Prabhuji, no problem is my problem. Okay. So, right, no problem is your problem. Everything is going well. So, even origin of this is also in the Supreme Lord. That is, sometimes Lord only wants to fight. Everybody is serving, everybody is very obedient, and Lord wants to fight. In Krishna, when his Supreme Lord comes as Lord Krishna, we say that Lord is teasing Rukmini, and he wanted to have that different rasa with Rukmini, which he has always with Satyabhama. And Rukmini is always so obedient, so in a absolutely without any tantrums. That Lord wants to see Rukmini in Satyabhama rasa, and that entire pastime happens in 10th canto. So the Lord only wants to fight. This is the first reason. Second reason, Acharya say, is that the Lord is source of everything. Janmadi yasya yatha. So not only the Lord is source of everything good, but everything apparently bad in the material world, the Lord is the source. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Everything emanates from him, right? So, and these feelings of anger and fighting, they are inherent in the personality of the Lord. What is the difference? The difference is that for Lord, friend and enemy, they will attain the same destination. But when this is reflected in the material world, the destinations will be completely different. When it is imitated by the living entity, the anger, Lord's anger is liberating. Living entity's anger is binding. That is the difference. But the second reason is Janmadi Yasyata. The third reason, Prabhupada writes here, that in Vaikuṇṭha, everybody is a devotee of the Supreme Lord. There is no enmity in the Vaikuṇṭha. In fact, the world itself is called as Nirmatsaranam Satam. Nirmatsar, there is no Matsar in the Vaikuṇṭha planets. And therefore, who will pick up an enmity with the Supreme Lord? No question. Therefore, enmity is only found in the material world, and therefore Lord appears in the material world. The fourth reason it is said that the Lord takes many, many incarnations. Bahunemi vyatiyatani janmani tavacha Arjuna. Lord is saying this to Arjuna. So, and why he comes? He comes because yada yada hi dharmasya. In the material world, he has his one dharma to do. Glanir dharmasya glani. Then Lord appears. So these are the 5 reasons why the Lord sanctioned this plan of Chatushkumar cursing Jaya and Vijaya. Further, Srila Prabhupada says, although sometimes the people in Vaikuṇṭha, they may come down and play, just like here we see Jai Vijay, and there is a great enmity. Prabhupada says that enmity is very temporary. It is like a grand drama put up by the Supreme Lord. But the enmity there is no permanent enmity between the servant and the master. And then later, everybody will go back home, back to Godhead. So the conclusion is that no one falls from spiritual world, which is eternal abode. Right. And therefore, when we go back there, yad gatva na nivartante. The fall down of a living entity in the material world is often accidental or due to curse or due to excessive curiosity. or due to a desire of rendering a service which is not required in the spiritual world, right? Then maybe you are not in a suitable place. Just like simple example for this is, there is a brahmachari ashram in the temple and there is a grihastha ashram, right? We are as grihasthas, there are some brahmachari. If some brahmachari wants to procreate and have a child, now it is not an illegitimate desire, but this desire is not to be fulfilled in the brahmacharya ashram. Then he has to get married and come to grihastha ashram, right? It is not. So sometimes a living entity may desire something, and which is like not a very illegitimate desire, but which is just not the is not congruent with the spiritual world. Then the living entity will be sent to material world, sometimes due to shapa, sometimes due to so these are the reasons. Otherwise nobody falls from Vaikuntha, and even the living entity once goes back home, back to Godhead, will also not fall from Vaikuntha. And further Srila Prabhupada writes about this is the plan of the Lord. Like for example, what is the plan of the Lord? Lord's plan can be different things. Prabhupada gives the example of Lord Buddha. He preached there is no God, and that was the plan of the Lord. But there was a plan behind that, because he wanted to stop the Yajnik Himsa, and it was emergency incarnation. So this is the first reason. Text 27. Brahmovacha athate munayo drishta. Yeah, 27. Nayananandabhajanam Vaikuṇṭham tadadishṭhānam Vikunṭham ca swayam prabham. Translation.
Translation: Lord Brahma said, after seeing the Lord of Vaikuṇṭha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the self-illuminated Vaikuṇṭha planet, the sages left that transcendental abode. Purport: the transcendental abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and confirmed in this verse, is self-illuminated. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in the spiritual world, there is no need of sun, moon, or electricity. This indicates that all the planets there are self-illuminated, self-sufficient, and independent. Everything there is complete. Lord Krishna says that once one goes to that Vaikuṇṭha planet, he never returns. The inhabitants of Vaikuṇṭha never return to the material world, but the incident of Jaya and Vijaya was a different case. They came to the material world for some time and then they returned to Vaikuṇṭha. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful words. Athate munayo drishta. Nayana Ananda Bhajanam. So this is who is the Supreme Lord is called as Nayana Ananda Bhajanam. Having the darshan of the Supreme Lord itself is great ananda to the form of the Lord. Sometimes you look at some beautiful person, beautiful man, handsome man, and a very beautiful lady. That form is very pleasing to the eyes. So the origin of all those forms is the Supreme Lord. He is called as Nayana Ananda Bhajanam. Another word here is Nayanabhiramam. So these are the words, This is why we should take darshan of the Lord. Another word to the Supreme Lord is Nayana Mahotsava. Okay. Nayana Mahotsava means it is festival to the eyes. Nayana Mahotsava. Here the word is Nayana Ananda Bhajanam. Vaikuṇṭham tad adhishṭhānam Vikunṭham ca swayam prabham. So they saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭhapati, directly in the atmosphere of Vaikuṇṭha. That is, Vaikuṇṭha is the Supreme Lord, and Swayam Prabham is the self-illuminating. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that how the Vaikuṇṭha worlds, they are self-illuminating. Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko, na pavakaha. And what is the glory of this? Yad gatva, once you go there, na nivartante, tad dhama paramam mama. So Lord very clearly talks about his abode beyond this material world, beyond the inebrities of the material world, and that abode is Vaikuṇṭha abode, and once one reaches there, one will never come back. Text 28. Bhagavanta parikramya pranipatyanumanacha pratijagmu pramudita shamsanto vaishnavim shriyam. Translation.
The sage circumambulated the Supreme Lord, offered their obeisances, and returned, extremely delighted at learning of the divine opulences of the Vaishnava. Purport. It is still a respectful practice to circumambulate the Lord in Hindu temples. Especially in Vaishnava temples, there is an arrangement for people to offer their respects to the deity and circumambulate the temple at least 3 times.
Yeah, so Bhagavantam parikramya pranipata anumanya cha pratijagmu. So they did pradakshina to the Supreme Lord, Bhagavantam parikramya, offered their obeisances, extremely delighted. Why extremely delighted? They were situated in Brahmavadi. By the will of the providence, they were just wandering here and there. Suddenly they crossed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gates of Vaikuṇṭha, suddenly came at the 7th gate. They were stopped, they became angry, they cursed. And to mitigate the whole thing, the Supreme Lord, along with Lakshmi, in such a graceful, casual mood, the Lord appeared, gave him the darshan. They smelled the tulasi from the lotus feet of the Lord, became devotees, offered prayers. Lord satisfied them, Lord praised them, Lord convinced them that this is my plan. And they were extremely, and all of this suddenly happened, right? And therefore, Pratijagmu Pramudita. So Mudita means being very happy. Okay, very delighted. We have our Mudit Krishna Prabhu, very happy devotee. So that is the meaning of Mudit. Pramudita, when there is a pra, it is intensified happiness. So this is Pratijagmu Pramudita Shamsanto Vaishnavim Shriya. So they had, so delighted at learning the divine opulence of the Vaishnava. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that therefore it is very important that one should do pradakshina in the temple at least 3 times every day. So all these, sometimes people say Hinduism is there is no written practice of written practice of Hinduism. Everything is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday we have seen the word Sanatana Dharma, right? And here we see the practice of Bhagavantam Parikramya. But this practice will not be written as a commandment. Number 1, circumambulate. Number 2, they will do this. That is also done by Rupa Goswami later. But these practices will be reflected by the behavior of the devotees in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is, and there is importance of doing parikrama to the Supreme Lord at least 3 times, Prabhupada writes here. And this is also one of the regulative principles. When we see the 64 principles of devotional service, so this is one of the principle is doing parikrama to the Supreme Lord. And therefore you will see that people, devotees, they will go around. Even in, or general temples also, people will go around. Prabhupada says, this is a Hindu practice, which is very practice, and there is always a parikrama mark. Text 29. Bhagavanugawahayatam ma braishtam astushamaha brahmatejas samarthopi hantum neche matam tume. Translation.
The Lord then said to his attendants, Jaya and Vijaya, depart this place, but fear not. All glories unto you. Though I am capable of nullifying the brāhmaṇas' curse, I would not do so. On the contrary, it has my approval. Purport, as explained in the connection with text 26, all the incidents that took place had the approval of the Lord. Ordinarily, there is no possibility that the 4 sages could be so angry with the doorkeepers, nor could the Supreme Lord neglect his 2 doorkeepers. Nor can one come back from Vaikuṇṭha after once taking birth there. All these incidents, therefore, were designed by the Lord himself for the sake of his pastimes in the material world. Thus, he plainly says that it was done with his approval. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for the inhabitants of Vaikuṇṭha to come back to this material world simply because of a Brahmanical curse. The Lord especially blesses the so-called culprits. All glories unto you. A devotee, once accepted by the Lord, can never fall down. That is the conclusion of this incident. Hare Krishna.
This Chatushkumar they left, and now remained only the Lord and his 2 devotees, Jaya and Vijay. They are trembling. They are looking at the lotus face of the Lord. And the Lord said, depart from this place, but do not fear. All glories unto you. Okay. So now the Lord is only glorifying his devotees. I am capable of nullifying this curse. Brahma Teja Samarthopi Hantum Neche Matam Tumi. But I will not do so. On the contrary, it has my approval. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that all these incidences indicate that this was by approval of the Lord. What are the instances? Sudden arrival of the sages. They becoming so angry. They're giving such a huge curse for a very minor offense. And then Lord is also sanctioning, is saying, yeah. Lord is glorifying the sages and saying that I can cut off my hand and give, I receive all my powers from the brāhmaṇas. And he, in a way, apparently neglecting his two doorkeepers, right? In this, in this quarrel between Chatushkumar and the two doorkeepers, the Lord took entire side of the Chatushkumar. And apparently he neglected his doorkeepers, which is not a nature of the Supreme Lord. And third thing is, they are coming from Vaikuṇṭha, somebody is falling down. So all these instances were impossible to happen unless it has had the approval of the Lord. And the Lord conveyed to Jaya and Vijaya, all glories unto you. By this fall down also, you will be eternally glorified in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? And so Prabhupada says, a devotee, once accepted by the Lord, can never fall down. And this is the conclusion of this incident. And now Brahmaji is here speaking to all the Devata. Text 30. Etat pura eva nirdishtam ramaya kruddhaya yada purapavaritam dvari vishanti mayuparate. Translation.
This departure from Vaikuṇṭha was foretold by Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She was very angry because when she left my abode and then returned, you stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. Hare Krishna.
Now the Lord says, now I will tell you something very, very personal. This your departure was also foretold by Lakshmi ji, the goddess of fortune. You once unknowingly offended her. How? She was very angry when she left my abode and then returned. You have stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. So, and Jaya and Vijaya, once Lakshmi, the Lord was taking rest and Lakshmi had just left Vaikuṇṭha. And when she returned, Jaya and Vijaya stopped her and they said that no, now is not the time. When Lord gets up, then you come. And this was done by Jaya and Vijay. And this offended Lakshmi very well. And then Lakshmi, fuming with anger, she said, this to people, I don't think so they will continue with their seva. Someday they will fall down for some time. And this is, Lord is conveying this to Jaya and Vijay. So while doing seva also, one has to be very, very careful. Simply the good intention does not suffice, the mediocre action. Our intention may be good, but if that does not reflect in the action, then it is a problem, right? Sometimes people say, okay, लोगों को मुझे बुरा कहना है कहने दो. I am how I am. मैं जैसा है वैसे ही रहूंगा, and I will continue my life like this. No, sir. Perception is reality, and it is very important that although our intention may be good, our actions also must be very pleasing, right? So this is the importance of intention and right action. But Kali Yuga is so bad, you may have a bad intention and right action, people will glorify you, right? Like Putana, when she came as Lakshmi-like looking form, even Brajavasis were bewildered, right? Intention was absolute malicious. Action was very good action. Natak of being a mother, and she is glorified. And therefore, one should not get caught up in that dvandva, that one's action has to be very pleasing. It's very important. I personally, quite a time, have become victim of this. Thinking good of somebody and doing something, and that person is only backfiring on you. But then over the years, I have controlled myself little bit. Of course, time to time this happens, but this is very important. Our intentions should not justify unpleasing action. Right? Text 31. Mahi samrambha yogena nistiram brahma helanam pratyeshatam nikasham me kalena alpayisa punaha. Translation.
Lord assured the two Vaikuṇṭha inhabitants, Jaya and Vijaya, by practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleansed of the sin of disobeying the brāhmaṇas and within a very short time return to me. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead advised the two doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijay, that by dint of bhakti yoga in anger, they would be delivered from the curses of the brāhmanas. Srila Madhva Muni remarks in this connection that by practicing bhakti yoga, one can become free from all sinful reactions. Even a Brahma Shapa or curse by Brahman, which cannot be overcome by any other means, can be overcome by bhakti yoga. One can practice bhakti yoga in many rasas. There are 12 rasas, 5 primary and 7 secondary. The 5 primary rasas constitute direct bhakti yoga, but although the 7 secondary rasas are indirect, they are also counted within bhakti yoga if they are used in the service of the Lord. In other words, bhakti yoga is all inclusive. If one somehow or other becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes engaged in Bhakti Yoga as described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.29.15, Kamam Krodham Bhayam. The gopis were attracted to Krishna by Bhakti Yoga in relationship of lusty desire, Kama. Similarly, Kamsa was attached to Bhakti Yoga by dint of fear of his death. Thus, Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that even becoming an enemy of the Lord and always thinking of in Him can deliver one very quickly. It is said, Viṣṇu Bhakta Smrutodaiva Asuras Tad Vipanyaya. Devotees of Lord Viṣṇu are called demigods, whereas non-devotees are called asuras. But Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that both demigods and asuras can derive its benefit if they always think of the personality of Godhead. The basic principle of Bhakti Yoga is to think of the Supreme Lord always. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18.65, Manmana bhava mad bhakta, always think of me. It doesn't matter which way one thinks, the very thought of the personality of Godhead is the basic principle of Bhakti Yoga. In the material planets, there are different grades of sinful activities, of which disrespecting a Brahmana or a Vaishnava is the most sinful. Here it is clearly stated that one can overcome even that grave sin simply by thinking of Viṣṇu, not even favorably, but in anger. Thus, even if those who are not devotees always think of Viṣṇu, they become free from all sinful activities. Krishna consciousness is the highest form of thought. Lord Viṣṇu is thought of in this age by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. From the statements of Bhagavatam, it appears that if one thinks of Krishna, even as an enemy, that particular qualification, thinking of Viṣṇu or Krishna, cleanses one of all sins.
Now the Lord says, Lord assured the two Vaikuṇṭhavasis, Jaya and Vijaya, that practice this yoga system of Bhakti Yoga, but it will be perverted in your case because you will be practicing it out of anger. And then you can be purified of your aparad that you have committed. That aparad is Brahma Helanam. Helanam means neglect. Right? So, Nistiriam Brahma Helanam. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Bhakti Yoga is extremely powerful and it can free oneself from all sinful reactions, even of Brahma Shapa. So later we will see that Brahma Danda Duratyaya, how Ambarish Maharaj completely crossed, and there Parikshit Maharaj becomes very startled because Brahma Shapa is very difficult to counter, but Bhakti Yoga has the power to overcome even Brahma Shapa. So this is the power of Bhakti Yoga. And therefore, bhakti, one has to practice bhakti. Now, how to practice bhakti? There are 12 rasas, Srila Prabhupada says. There are 5 primary rasas in bhakti and 7 secondary rasas. And Nectar of Devotion very elaborately describes about which are these 5 rasas and secondary rasas. Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakhyaras, Vatsalyaras, Madhuryaras. These are the 5 direct rasas that are 5 primary rasas. And there are secondary rasas like Hasya, Adbhuta, Veera, Daya, Raudra, Bhayanaka, Bibhatsa. So these are the the secondary rasas. So somebody is in a Virya ras, somebody is in a Raudra ras, somebody is in a Bibhatsa ras. So these are the secondary rasas. And at times the pastime with the devotees and the Lord, one rasa will be prominent and other rasas will be secondary within that pastime itself. And this is how the pastime is being generated by exchange of different rasas or mellows. Bhakti yoga is all inclusive. One can practice any rasa, but if somehow the thought is about Krishna, that Krishna thought is purifying. And therefore Rupa Goswami says, Tasmat kenapi upayena mana Krishna niveshayet. Therefore, somehow or other, one has to engage one's mind in Krishna. Best is favorably, if not at least unfavorably. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, Kamam krodham bhayam sneham aikyam saurudamevacha nityam haro vidato yanti tanmayatam hite. That anybody who constantly direct their lust, anger, fear, affection, feeling of impersonal oneness, or the friendship towards Lord Hari are surely become to be absorbed in the thought. And whenever somebody is absorbed in the thought, he is sure to be purified. There is example of Paundraka, who declared himself to be Krishna. He had two knuckly, the arms, and he was just moving around. And when he came in front of Krishna, everybody had a great laugh. Krishna finally killed him, liberated him. But after liberation, he attained the Sarupya Mukti. This is the process of unfavorably thinking of Krishna, although he was thinking of Krishna as his enemy. And therefore, Prabhupada says, therefore, Bhakti Yoga is extremely powerful. And basic principle of Bhakti Yoga is somehow or other, get your mind to Krishna. Mana Krishna niveshayet. Tasmat kenapi upayana, kuch to koro. Right. And here, the Lord also gives the same instruction. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Finally, Prabhupada explains that on the material planets there are different types of offenses, but the worst is Brahma Helanam. Is the gravest sin is to simply is to offend a Vaishnava or a Brahmana, disrespecting Brahmana or a Vaishnava. But even that sin can be nullified by thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, of different types of thoughts, the highest thought is Krishna consciousness. Why? Because even if done unwillingly, unknowingly, unfavorably, that thought of Krishna will purify everyone. And therefore, when we chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada says, then one is cleansing one's sins automatically. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
So we'll conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura
Jai,
Bhakta everyone.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.